Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block is called Crackers. Now there's another block that's much simpler called Crackers or Cracker, but the book I got this out of just said no name block, and so I gave it a name because it looked like little crackers to me for some reason. Here is the diagram, and we have 4 different fabrics: background and a light, medium, and dark from the color family. Here are 4 blocks set block to block. I think this would be a great scrap quilt to make. Now we have 4 patches, and for each patch I have AccuQuilt dies you can use to cut these, and I cut mine with the AccuQuilt die for this demo. Patch A is a 2-inch finished square. You cut 2.5-inch squares. We'll need 4 patches of the dark, 4 patches of the medium, and 8 patches of the background. Patch B is a 2-inch finished half square triangle. You'll cut 2 7/8-inch squares and cut them in half once on the diagonal. These are going to be used to make the square on point units. There are 4 of them, so you'll have to cut them into triangle shapes. We'll need 16 patches for the medium fabric. Patch C is a 4-inch finished square, and this goes in the center. We cut 4.5-inch square, and we just need 1. Patch D is a 4-inch finished square on point. We cut 1 square at 3 3/8 inches, and we'll need 4 of those. I had a question on the YouTube comment: how can you get a 4-inch finished square out of a 3 3/8 inch square? And the reason you can do that is because you put this square on point. You take this square, and if you put it on this grid, it's just slightly over 3 inches. If I turn it on the diagonal, then it is almost 5 inches. So once we get the seam allowances out of the way, it'll be a 4-inch finished square. So you add your triangles here, and then that 3 3/8 inch square with the triangles becomes a 4-inch finished square. So that's why that is like that. Now let's take a look at our fabrics. I've chosen 3 different reds. So there's my light, my medium, and my dark. Here are the squares, and here are the half square triangles, the center square, and then the squares on point. For step 1, we take all of the A patches, and we're going to make 4 patch units. You just follow the diagram on the sheet, lay these out, stitch these 2 together, then these 2, press the seams and stitch the 2 rows together, and you'll make 4 of these 4 patch units. Now for step 2, we take patch D, which is the square on point, and we take patch B and sew 4 patch B's all around patch D. This will be the square on point unit. And I like to sew opposite ends first, press, and sew the other ends second. If you're not familiar with the square on point, stay tuned for a short tutorial that will show you how to do it with rotary cutting and with AccuQuilt cutting. And you'll make 4 of these. I like to start by piecing opposite sides first. And what I do is flip this over, center the square on the triangle, matching these edges, the long edge of the triangle and one side of the square. You want to see if these triangles over here on the right and here on the left are roughly the same size. You just kind of eyeball it. So there, I'm going to go with that. Stitch 1/4 inch from this edge, a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. Do this side as well. Press your seams open, and if you look, these edges extend here, and what I'm going to do now is just trim these off straight in line with the side of the square. Put your half square triangle down with the right side facing up, and then place this in the center, and then check your the size of your triangles overhanging here. And what you're going to do here, you will start stitching right here in this V section where this point meets. And this should be 1/4 inch from here to the edge of this fabric. Start here, stitch 1/4 inch all the way to this side, and you should come out here at the same part on this side. And do that on both sides. And here's what the stitching looks like. And now you're going to press your seams open. And here's the finished unit. Now just trim off these little nubs on the sides. And your unit's finished. Piecing the square on point using AccuQuilt. I like to start by piecing opposite sides first. And you're going to place the half square triangle piece on top. We need to center it. I just kind of eyeball it, and I'm looking at this little triangle of the bottom fabric poking out here. You can barely see it. It's a little triangle poking out here, and then on the other side there's a little triangle poking out here. What you want to do is try to get them as close to the same size as possible. So I'm just kind of shifting it a little bit. And you're going to take it to your machine, and your 1/4 inch should be right here at this point. So you stitch from this point 1/4 inch all the way down, and you come off at this point. And it's more important that you have the 1/4 inch than if you're exactly on the point. And you'll do that for both sides, this side and then this opposite side. Press your seams open. Now we'll flip it over and do the other two sides. You take your triangle, and now you have sides that you can match. You see the triangle has the points cut off. These points are going to line up with what we just sewed. So if you look here, you see they line up with this edge, these two edges, here, here, and across the top. Now you'll stitch 1/4 inch from that point here all the way down to this other point, and do that to both sides. It's really difficult to see the stitching because I used white thread, but you can see it coming out here, this little tag here, and over here. If these don't match perfectly, if it's like it's not long enough, don't stretch this triangle because you'll just make the unit wonky. Just center it as much as you can and stitch 1/4 inch. Now we'll just press it open and it will be finished. And there's your finished unit. At some point when you finish your square on point unit, you'll have to sew something else to it. And you want to keep these points nice and sharp. And sometimes you might be matching it to a seam line or a plain piece of fabric or maybe another point. And I'm going to show you how to keep these points nice. If you've pressed your seam open, you will see where these three fabrics intersect and form a point right here. That's your point on the back, and it's also your point on the front. So you can stitch with this part on top, and you'll be able to make sure that your point stays there. I take a pin and put it right there at the point, and then pick it up on this back side. And in this case, I'm going to come down about 1/4 inch and then put that right in the seam line. That way the point will end up right on the seam line. Put your fabric pieces together and line up the top edges or the edges that you need to line up. And make sure your pin is perpendicular, goes straight down into the fabric, like that. If you're at an angle like this, your points won't match. So make sure they're straight, perpendicular to the fabric, and then put it into the fabric. When you start sewing, line up these edges here. Start at your 1/4 inch and sew all the way down, and you're going to aim for this point where that pin goes into the fabric, and you'll know that you're matching the point and the seam line on the back. And straighten your bottom edge again and continue stitching 1/4 inch off. And here's what the stitching looks like if you can barely see it on here with this thread. It goes right across here, leaving the point open. You're not stitching over the point. And then if I flip it over, you'll see it's not exactly 1/4 of an inch there, but that doesn't matter because what you want is the point to match the seam allowance here. Now just press the seam open and you're finished. We have all of our units ready. We have four patch units and 4 square on point units, and then our square is considered a unit as well. So that totals up to 9. We have 9 units, and that means that this is a 9 patch block. And here's what that means. We put 3 units across and 3 units down. And this goes in the center. This is a 3 by 3 grid, 3 across and 3 down, and 3 times 3 is 9. So this is considered a 9 patch block. And since each unit in this block finishes at 4 inches, and there's 3 of them across, so 3 times 4 is 12. So this 9 patch block is 12-inch finished. And we'll just sew the top units together, the center units and the bottom units, press the seams, and then sew all the rows together. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.